Friends, welcome to the new small shop. 70 square feet small shop, where today I'm going to take these two pieces of material and turn them into a bench hook. Stick around if you want to learn how to make it my way. My work surface is this temporary bench. It's simply made up of this piece here and this piece here. I've had that for quite some time, and this piece here is something that was already here that I'm utilizing. And you can see that I've got a couple of clamps holding everything in place. On this end, I have a couple of pieces of metal that I use as stops. There's one there, and then there's one on this end as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay a batten across there so that I can do some planing. So I'll show you what's going on here in a second. The material is some glued up plywood here, a couple pieces somebody was throwing away, and a stop, some square material here. I believe this is poplar, so it could be any material that you have on hand. So that's what I'm going to be using to make the bench hook with, and then some simple hand tools. So I've determined that this face here is flat, and not quite sure if you can see that, but I have put a reference mark there indicating that it's flat, and now I want to make this edge square with this face. And to do that, I'm going to use this hand plane. Now, someone gave this to me, and I've used it a little bit, and I believe it's going to be sufficient for what I'm going to be doing here. So let's give it a go and see how it works out. With this particular plane, in order to set the depth of cut, you first loosen this wing nut, and then you adjust this knob right here, and it pushes the blade forward. So that's barely peeking out there. I'll tighten this up and we'll see how it cuts. Well, okay, I'm going to call that good. So I've already determined that this corner is square, and this is the edge that I'm going to mount my stop against. And I want to make sure that I put my flat face down and my square edge facing me, okay? So I'm going to mount this on here like so. I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to use the remaining cutoff as the other part of the hook, because all it needs to do is act as a stop so that when I'm pushing against it, it doesn't move. So this is 10.5 inches wide, and so I'm going to cut my piece of material to 9.5 inches wide. So let's get to doing that. Now to cut it to length, I'm just going to use this back saw. So you'll notice that I marked a line across this face and across this face. Then I tilted the material and held it on an angle so that I could not only watch this line, but I could also watch this line, and that helps me make a square cut. Now these two pieces of material can be joined together. I just want to make sure that my flat face and my square edge are oriented correctly. And I'll just attach this with some screws, no glue. That way I can change this later on if I need to. So using the multi-mark here, I'm just going to make a line where I'm going to drill holes for some screws. Two inches from this edge here. And we'll make it 2 inches from this edge here also. So as you can see here, I've temporarily attached the fence to the base with a clamp. Now I'm going to turn this whole thing over. And using the same drill bit that I used to make the through holes, I'm going to drill down through and make a couple of spots on the fence, underside of the fence. These aren't something that have to be real deep. So you can see one here and the other one here. And all these will do is allow me to make a pilot hole in the right location. Well, I discovered that these number 7 by 1.5 inch screws are the longest screws that I could use for this application, which means I'm going to have to counter bore using a drill bit about the same size as the head of the screw, probably 3/4 of an inch deep or halfway through this base in order to be able to get any kind of good tightening on this fence. So I got to do that. Well, I ended up having to counter bore those. Ended up using a countersink bit, which is actually meant to just countersink, but I used it as a counter bore, which should allow the head of the screw to, how well you can see that, pass through enough to where it can get a good purchase on the fence. Let's give it a shot. You know, one thing I think I'm going to do before I attach this is I'm going to put a chamfer along this edge right here. So you can see that this is my square edge to my flat face. And the reason I'm going to do this is because if sawdust gets caught at this corner, it could cause a poor cut, an unsquare cut. And so by putting a chamfer here, it's going to create a relief for sawdust. That should be good. Now for the pilot holes. Now a couple screws. I'm going to recheck to make sure that it's square. The square does not move on any edge, so that is sufficient. So to attach the cleat, I just eyeballed it. It might even be off a little bit. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean squat. All it's going to be is a cleat that holds it in place or helps to hold it in place. I'm just going to shoot some holes in here and in some random place. It doesn't matter. So there we have it. One bench hook. Let's try it out. By golly, it works like a bench hook. Now, it's probably not square, but you know what that means? That means it's time to make the next appliance, a shooting board. That's coming up, so stick around. I'd like to take a moment to say thanks for sticking around to watch this video. If you like content like this, where we're making easy projects, if you like woodworking tips that are practical, be sure to like and subscribe. I've got a whole slew of videos that I think might help you in your workshop and in your woodworking journey. Thanks again.